Okay. Hari Om Tat Sat. Jai Guru. At the outset, allow me to register SID Malaysia's, I would say, gratitude, indebtedness to invite us here to share some thoughts, on particularly chapter 17. It's not easy to organize a program like this for 18 days, and as Lord Krishna himself has said, that person is the most dearest to me who helps to spread his word, which is the word of the Bhagavad Gita. So, the dedicated group of people here, we should hold them in great esteem, because by spreading this word, we are removing delusion and ignorance of our true self. So, please carry on every year, and the other greatness is that we invite other organizations also to come and participate also. It's fantastic. With these opening remarks, today's talk is now 5 minutes to 8. I'll take about maybe 35 to 40. I didn't time myself. I'm going to make it very informal. I'm going to relax myself, and I hope all of you also will be very relaxed. And I've segmented today's presentation in 4 segments. Segment 1, I want to say a few words about the Bhagavad Gita in general. Number 2, explain the term Shraddha and the 3 gunas, the terms Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. I'm sure the speaker who dealt with chapter 14 would have done that also very deeply. Who was the gentleman or lady who did that?
Tangamani man.
Oh, she would have done a wonderful job. So, the 3 terms, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Then, this chapter is basically a summary of human behavior in 5 key domains. The domains being 1, the nature of worship, how do you worship? 2, ahara, taking in of food. 3, 4 and 5, yajna, dana and tapas. These are the 5 domains. As mediated, as impelled by the gunas. I prepared a summary sheet. So once you have a summary sheet, it becomes much more clearer. So there's a heart of today's presentation. And lastly, a brief explanation as given in chapter 17 of the terms Om Tat Sat. The great Indian Maharishis, thinkers, how brilliantly they have summarized Brahman in these 3 terms. So this is what we are going to cover. As I go along, I am here, the only reason why I am here is I have learned a little bit from my guru, Swami Bhubananda Tirtha, his sannyasi disciple, Swami Nirviseshananda, and Ma. So I might be using the terms Puja Swamiji, that's my guru. I may use the word Nutan Swamiji because he came a bit later. It's actually Swami Nirviseshananda Tirtha. And then Ma is Ma Guru Priya. This is the triumvirate, just like in the Ramakrishna tradition we have Thakur, we have got Swami Vivekananda and Ma Charadevi, we have also 3. So this is what I am going to share. Now let's start with Bhagavad Gita in general. Actually, the greatness of the Bhagavad Gita is the essence of the Upanishads. It's the essence of the Upanishads. You don't have to go many places. Upanishads are 10 in number, and there's there's some dispute on that, but there are principally 10 great Upanishads. But if you want to know about Brahman, you will go and look for it in many places, and of course you can do that if you want to. But why? In Bhagavad Gita is a compendium of all of that in there. So what is the core teaching of the Upanishads and therefore the Bhagavad Gita? What is the core teaching? And there is no greater person than Adi Shankara to summarize it. And he says, I will summarize for you in a few lines what is uttered and expressed in crores and crores of stanzas and slokas. What is that? Brahma Satyam. Brahman alone is real. Jagat Mithya. This entire Jagat that we see is all the time in motion, in moving. It's not real at all. Brahma Satyam Jagat Nitya. Jiva Brahmaiva Na Paraha. This I is that Brahman. These are the three fundamental truths that all of us are trying to not only read intellectually but trying to practice it in our daily lives. All of us here. Every time we come for a satsang, every time, because the human mind is so frail, we'll go back to worldliness. So these are the three fundamental truths which man, but because of the non-understanding of these three truths, man suffers from a great delusion. Very great delusion. And the best way to remember this delusion is by recalling a small story. I'm going to tell a lot of stories today. And unless you enliven it, you know, it will be a very dry topic. What is this story? Adi Shankara, 6th century AD, had taken his bath with his retinue of followers and he was coming out from the river. And as he was coming out, as was a tradition at that time, they said, move, a great sannyasi is coming, so move, I class Nambudiri, you know, in Kerala. Move. In Malayalam, Varimaru, move. On the opposite side, some of you will know the story, but no harm in recalling it again. From the other side was a Chandala. A Chandala is lower than the low of the caste system, untouchable, who takes care of the graveyard and things like that. And he was coming from the other side with his dogs. But how can a great Nambudiri come even near? Even the shadow cannot fall on him. And when he heard that Varimaru, move, the Chandala asked this question. Whom are you asking to move? Is it this body? My body is also made of 5 Panchabhutas, and so is your body. So we are the same. And are you asking the Atma to move? The Atma is all pervasive, it's in you as well as in me. So whom are you asking to move, he asked. The moment the question was asked by Chandala, Adi Shankara fell at his feet. Apparently, according to legend, it is Lord Shiva who had come to teach him a lesson of this great delusion. The delusion is, we are not sure of our own identity. The root cause of all suffering in life is non-self-realization or non-understanding of our true identity, which is what is brilliantly summarized in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2. You know, the soul cannot be cut, cannot be wed. That is the core teaching. In fact, my Swamiji says, actually the whole of the Bhagavad Gita is in chapter 2. The rest of it all is just Q&A, and so on and so forth. So this is the Chandala story, brilliantly illustrating the great delusion under which we are. This delusion is not a theoretical knowledge. You know. Theoretically, we all know, all of us know, but it is to know it at the experiential level. So, the Bhagavad Gita enlightens us as to our true identity. But greater than that, it also is a book of sadhana. It's a wonderful book of sadhana. The emphasis, I would say, in the Bhagavad Gita is more the sadhana part. Once the truth has been given, what kind of practices must you engage in? For example, chapter 2, Sthita Prajna. What are the lakshanas of a person who has attained that? Chapter 12, Bhakta Lakshanas. And chapter 13, qualities of a knower. And in this chapter 17, a deeper penetration of gunas. So all the chapters are actually trying to bring us back, remove this delusion from us, by way of further amplifying the nature of Brahman or giving us sadhana practices for us to follow. So, chapter 17, now I have not finished segment 1, I am going to segment 2. Chapter 17, titled Shraddha Traya Vibhaga Yoga, translated by Swami Tapasyanandaji Maharaj of Ramakrishna Mission, now you know, as the 3 divisions of faith. Shraddha he defines as faith, and there are 3 divisions to it. I will illustrate it further. Once the pamphlet is distributed, it will become more clearer. So we have now touched upon Bhagavad Gita in general. We cannot proceed further, go deeper, unless segment 2, going to item 2. We should understand the term Shraddha and revisit the understanding of the terms. First one, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Once we understand Shraddha, there are 3, then we are prepared to go deeper into chapter 17. Now, my Swamiji says, actually speaking, there is no equivalent in English to the word Shraddha. Actually, there is no equivalent. The closest you can come to is faith. Faith. Faith is the closest that you can come to. Sometimes the word attention is also there, but basically it is faith. Now, Shraddha, Lord Krishna says, is inseparable from one's inner constitution. Is inseparable. You cannot delineate it or take it out. Everyone is what his faith is. Now, for a further understanding of Shraddha, this is the great, wonderful book my Puja Swamiji brought out, Insights into Bhagavad Gita. And I'm taking, this book was brought out just 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, where every verse, there is a Sanskrit, transliteration in English, and he has given a commentary on every verse. So I'm now going to turn to that segment on Shraddha, so that we'll see what my Swamiji is saying about Shraddha. Shraddha, Krishna asks, is inseparable from one's inner being. It is characteristic of the mind, intelligence and ego in each. None can peep into another's inner being, but from the Shraddha that he displays, his inner being can be educed. Now he gives a good example. The example illustrates the word Shraddha much better. Say a set of devotees go to a temple and worship. They look at the same deity and do the worship alike. 3 of them feel very happy that God will fulfill their wish. The remaining 5 feel their worship was not fruitful. What is the difference between them? Swamiji says, all went to the same shrine, looked at the same deity, spent the time praying together. 3 felt happy and fulfilled, but the rest 5 did not. Physically, the effort was the same, but what a striking difference in the outcome each gained. Obviously, it was brought about by an internal, invisible factor that shaped their prayer, the Shraddha in each. This is explanation of Puja Swami. So there is a Shraddha in all of us. That is what really distinguishes us. Now, that's so much for Shraddha. Now I told you, we need to also revisit the 3 terms. What are the 3 terms? Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Man's Shraddha, his faith, is determined by the dominance of one or the other of the 3 qualities of nature. Whole of nature is nothing but a composition of these 3 qualities, gunas. Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. And Sattva stands for law, harmony, purity, goodness. Sattva. It is a sattvic quality. One must enhance sattvic quality. This is what we mean by that. Harmony, purity, goodness. Rajas stands for energy and passion. Full of energy to accomplish a lot of things, but the ego is there, very strong person. And Tamas, of course, all of you know, is for inertia, ignorance, and so on. Now, in an individual where Sattva Guna predominates, he will develop or he will display what? Sattvic Shraddha. Where Rajo Guna predominates, it will be Rajasic Shraddha, and where Tamo Guna predominates, it will be Tamasic Shraddha. So what I have done now at this juncture, may I request Mr. Jaratnam, Vignesh, you also maybe want to help a bit to Everyone has a copy. This is the heart of our presentation. Heart of our presentation. If everyone has got a copy, I'll proceed. I'll proceed. Okay. Bhagavad Gita chapter 17, a summary of behaviors in 5 domains propelled by nature's 3 gunas. So we have got Sattvic Shraddha, Rajasic Shraddha and Tamasic Shraddha. And on the left hand side we have the 5 domains. One when it comes to the nature of worship. How do you worship? Second, consumption of food, ahara. You know, you get that person who has got Sattvic Shraddha, what is the nature of his ahara? We'll come to that. Performance of sacrifices, yajna, 3rd domain. 4th domain, austerities, conduct of austerities. 5th domain, carrying out charity or dana. These are the 5 domains. And on top, Sattvic Shraddha, Rajasic Shraddha and Tamasic Shraddha. Take for example the food. A person's Sattvic Shraddha, when it comes to ahara, can you see that? What type of food he will gravitate towards? Sattvic food that is best for the mind and body. Food that brings longevity, inner strength and brilliance. Promotes inner spiritual delight. Very delicious, soft and easily digestible food. Bhagavad Gita 17 verse 8. Likewise, and so on. When it comes to Rajasic, you can see very spicy, chili, you know, those kinds of things which will agitate you a lot, you know. That is the second one. And the third one is take the food that is overcooked, stale, leftover and impure. It has lost its taste and true nutritional value. This is how I mapped out the behaviors under each of them. But what I am going to do now, to make it a bit more lively and interesting, I am going to take some anecdotes to further illustrate it. Let's start with the first one, nature of worship. Now, those of Sattvic Shraddha, faith, but Sattvic, they will worship divine gods, divine beings. And when they do that, when they engage in such prayer, naturally they will inculcate, enhance the divinity and refinement in themselves. And I can here give an illustration. All of you know Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, right? You are such a great devotee of Mother Kali. And one day, the great Advaita monk came, one great Advaita monk came, Totapuri. He was a great non-dualist. He scoffed at devotional worship, deity worship. In fact, he was running down Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Oh, why are you praying to this Kali and etc. etc. God actually is without form. All these forms are to be thrown away. This is the way he was talking. So he taught Ramakrishna Paramahamsa the principles of Advaita Vedanta, taught him Advaitic type of meditation. So he taught him, you sit down and you meditate. And don't meditate on a form, take a mantra and things like that. When he started doing it, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the moment he closed his eyes, Mother Kali will appear in his mind. What can he do? Because he is such a pure person. His entire life had been dedicated to the worship of Kali. He could not. Again and again he tried. And out of exasperation, Totapuri took a glass bead and put it here and pressed. Now you meditate, he said. And this is described by M in his Gospel. He says that Mother Kali again appeared. I took a sword and I cut into half. And I went into deep samadhi. This Totapuri got worried. For 3 days he was in total samadhi. No food, no water. He would have dropped his body. So Totapuri had to bring him back to total awareness. What does it show? When the mind has become so pure, then only you can go to the formless level, which is what was attained by Ramakrishna Paramahamsa through the intervention of Totapuri. So why I'm illustrating this is that, Khalid, if you want to truly worship, you take on, purify your mind, eventually you will attain that state. On the other hand, if you engage in Rajasic Shraddha, or let's take Tamasic Shraddha, I am from an estate, no? My father was in an estate in Vaitara. Why I'm doing that is. So I am very familiar with the worship of what to do workers who come from India and so on those days. And they had fear that there are some parts of the estate where ghosts and other things are dwelling. So they will build some kind of shrine there. And you know what they offer? Liquor, flesh and other things. What can they do? They only know that. And their mind is on that. They think that by appeasing the ghosts and so on in that manner, they will grow or develop in a better way. Basically, liquor, flesh, and I was told there's a temple in Brahmpurai where they mainly, I think my good friend Ramakrishnan is here.
Muniandi temple.
Muniandi temple.
Jalanbaru Muniandi temple. Jalanbaru Muniandi temple.
Jalanbaru Muniandi temple, where they only offer flesh.
Yes, every day.
And there are many other gangsters, isn't it?
So even all races also.
All. You know, for advisor, when Swami heard of it, he said, not a drop of blood should drop between the premises of a temple. But their worship is like that. They're deluded, and this is exactly what spirit deeper. And what will it do? A degenerating effect on the mind. If you engage in Rajasic worship, or for the matter, Tamasic worship. So we must gravitate towards this one. Now we'll go to the second item, consumption of food. This is something I like to spend a bit of time. But you see, you know, all of you, and if you have not, please listen to that. I consider now Swami Sarvapriyananda to be the greatest exponent of Advaita Vedanta to a Western audience. He has just finished 1 year in Harvard also, qualifying further to meet Western audiences, scientists and whatnot. He has given a brilliant talk, the 5 koshas, the 5 sheets which envelop us. We are at 5 sheets, one of the major teachings of Advaita Vedanta, we are in 5 sheets. The outermost sheet is the Annamaya kosha, food. So this body that we see here is actually an outcome of the food that we have taken. Naturally, if you take sattvic food, what will happen to us? You will develop a sattvic body. If you take spicy food and so on, what will happen to you? You know what will happen. So, this Bhagavad Gita is telling us very clearly where should be our concentration. Now, I want to share something. Not only this talk will be interesting, otherwise it's a very dry talk. We in SRD, pre-COVID, not now, periodically we will go and stay in our Swamiji's ashram in Thrissur, Kerala. There are a few of us who go there and stay there. And one of the most early days, now we are accustomed to it, that struck us was the discipline with which food is served, how it is prepared, how it is consumed. Every stage of the way, they endeavor to make the food as sattvic as possible. No need to mention, there's no onion garlic and so on. But when you are serving, because I'm eating my children that is there, the vessel, the serving spoon should not touch the vessel. One instant. When you're wiping the plates for the next person to eat, when you're drying it, you shouldn't talk because the saliva can come. The people who are serving must wear, if they come from town, they must change their clothes and see to be the latest or very well clean clothes and so on. Every aspect of the ashram, I'm talking about the food, is taken care of. Because the food must be sattvic. And here I can narrate an incident. I was told you of Ma and Swami Nirvisesha Tirtha, before their sannyasa days, they were husband and wife. They were actually, he was a professor at IIT Kharagpur. And she was also a physicist, but she had left her university. And in IIT Kharagpur, they were also leading a very disciplined life, very Spartan life. And he was Muthu Swami by his nature was a very, very sattvic person. So one day, all the time his food is prepared by Ma. So one day, when he wanted to eat, he found that the food was looking brackish, like charcoal. It looked like that to him. So he asked Ma, why is the food looking like this today? It's not. Oh, today I asked the maid to cook. The maid to cook. Maybe that day the maid had some impurities. But we are not sensitive enough to see, but his faculties are so sensitive, he was able to pick up immediately that the food is not sattvic. Which we will not know. People who have been trained in that, they will know. So the sattvic food is so important. I'm just giving an illustration only. Now, this is more on the lighter side. I have a cousin. He's in Australia. My very good friend. We grew up together. He was in Tanka, and all days were together. I was in Malacca. Now he's in Australia. But even that time, even now, you know how he eats? When he eats rice or whatever it is, on the left hand side will be chili. He would eat the chili and then take the food. And the chili will be very, very spicy. So I thought he would have given up this habit by going to Australia. It was very bland. But there, he took me to his garden. In one corner of the garden, he has planted even more spicy type of chilies. He has procured these chilies from somewhere, but in terms of level of spiciness, it's even higher. So it's very difficult to change one's tendencies once you've got it. Once you've got this, particularly when it comes to food, Swamiji says very clearly, all the man's senses will drop as you grow older and older and older. But finally, the final thing may not drop, will remain is the taste for food. And he illustrates with old ladies, teeth all have dropped, but they still want to take murukku. So they want to take the murukku, they pound it, make it, and then take it. Swamiji illustrates with that. So I was listening. Another one more story. One day I was going to Penang, taking Muthu Swamiji for a talk. This is old and before. And we were going, and from the other vehicle in front, a very strong smell came. And I could pick it up. What is it? Durian. But Swamiji asked me, what is that pungent taste? I said, Swamiji, you don't know, this is the king of Malaysia's food. Ayo, please overtake and go away from far away from me. This food is not sattvic at all. This food is not sattvic at all. He's referring to durians. I went through that experience. Okay, now we'll go to the third item. Performance of sacrifices, yajna. When I was trying to learn Sanskrit at an older age, picking up Sanskrit is not easy. But some stanzas here and there I picked up. And there was one shloka which was taught me last year. I loved it very, very much. Because we are talking about performance of yajna, sacrifice. And I'll read this, the first one, Sattvic Shraddha. Performer has no desire for its stated result. He just does the sacrifice because it's just a noble act to do. Sole attention is on the performance itself, with the mind fully focused on its details. That's the true, what you call, Sattvika Shraddha. That's the kind of Sattvic attitude you should. This particular stanza says, the word Paropakaraya, the duty of a river is to just give water. He doesn't expect anything. The duty of a fruit tree is just to shed fruits, not to expect anything in return. The duty of a cow is just to give milk, not to expect anything in return. Man's duty, this body, has got only one purpose. What is that? Seva for others. No other duty. Your only duty is to serve others. That's it. You are born with that attitude. Never only your family, your kith and kin. No. You must only live for the service of others. And here, Rani will resonate very well when Swami Ranganathanji Maharaj. Swami Ranganatha was one of the greatest monks of the Ramakrishna order. He headed the Hyderabad center, and later he was elevated to become the head. He was declared cultural ambassador of India. because of his tremendous knowledge that he had on all the Upanishads and all the Vedic literature. People thought he had double PhD. Actually, he left his school at SSLC, Form 5. He went to Mysore Ashram. When the senior monks would read what we call the Bhagavad Gita, he quickly wash the plate, sit by the doorway. He mastered the 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita just by standing in the doorway and mastering it. And he did so much of work, research, etc., 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 and so on. And when he went to Princeton University, people thought he had double PhD and so on. The professors there. He has summarized the whole of spirituality in just 2 words. I love it. What is that? When I close my eyes, I experience only bliss and tranquility and contentment. When I open my eyes, I ask, what can I do for you? Can you see how beautifully he has summarized? If we are truly successful in our spiritual path, when you close your eyes, you should feel tranquility, serenity, contentment. My Swamiji uses 5 words. Placidity, tranquility, serenity, contentment, bliss. Anyone, take anyone. This is what we want in life. And that bliss you must have within you. But when you open your eyes, seva, service. Now, that's so much for that. Please shift to the Tamasic Shraddha, BG 17.13. Feeding people lovingly is not done. Who? Those who are Tamasic Shraddha. Adequate dakshina to priest attendance not carried out. Not carried out. What is our famous example? The greatest example we have in this particular area? None other than in the Kathopanishad. What happened in the Kathopanishad? Vajashravas, a great householder, was conducting sacrifice. And his son was watching it. Nachiketa. This is how the start of the Kathopanishad. After the sacrifice is over, by right you should give the best items to the Purohit priest. But instead of that, he was giving cows which had stopped lactating, etc., etc., and all this. So the son asked, Father, what is this? Is wrong? When the son raised it, he got angry. Finally, out of anger, when he said, 3rd time he asked the son, Nachiketa, whom will you give to me? I will give you to the Lord of Death. And that's how the whole story starts. The point is that father was vitiating a very holy ceremony by giving out gifts which are totally wrong. He should not have done that. So now we have completed. I hope this way is okay with you all. I'm just. I've always told when I teach, when I was training, you will forget Menon. I used to be called Menon, but you will not forget my stories. You remember my stories, because the stories will remain. These stories are in me deeply. Because my Swamiji has taught me all this. I'm here only because I told you again and again. The Swamiji has taught me these stories to resonate in any situation. There is a story there. We know how we should behave. Now, conduct of austerities. There are 3 verses there explaining what austerity is. Bodily austerity, austerity of the work, how you speak and so on. And the other austerity is mental austerity. This is what 3-fold austerity. Now these 3 levels of austerity to be pursued with full care and concern, but no expectation for any kind of external reward or gain therefore. Here, I want to illustrate with 2 stories. One is Malaysia itself. The beginning of SIRD, early days, we didn't have a center. But once we had a center, nobody was going to go to the center because that time we were all very young and very busy, and we didn't know the value of austerity also. That's when Puja Swamiji told, we had an Uncle Ramasamy here. Puja Swamiji told him, I want you to go to the center in the morning, light a lamp and sit there for a while. And I also would like you to do it in the evening. 2 times, Swamiji, yes, 2 times he said. And Uncle Ramasamy, the great man he was, he's passed away now, the great man he was, without fail, rain, shine, or whatever the thing, he was there in the morning and in the evening, opening the center, writing the landline. So later, after the people began to grow and so on, Swami used to say, that austerity displayed by Uncle Ramaswamy Iyer is the genesis of this group of people coming into being. So even in Agida Ashram, don't worry of anything about it. Whatever you are doing is great, but great austerity, do that. And providence will help you in mysterious ways. You don't know how providence will help you also. So, another one more story, again from Ramakrishna Mission. Before I came into, into contact with Puja Swamiji in 1989, prior to that, it was all Ramakrishna monks. And I was fully open Uma Sambandha. Any programs you used to call us, and we used to go there. So talks given by great monks. Now, Swami Krishnananda, who was a great devotee, he was in Belluman, but when Madras Ashram, Madras Mylapore, wanted a priest or saint to go there, or a Swami to go there, no, there's nobody. So finally, Swami Vivekananda said, you go and set up the center. So he went. And when he went there, who has heard of Swami Vivekananda and all that at that time in South India, in Chennai, highly traditional society. But he went there, the dedication with which he ran the place. Once he went to give a talk. Nobody came for the talk. The hall was empty. You know what he did? He gave a talk to an empty hall. Because for him, Ramakrishna Paramahansa was there also. He gave a talk to an empty hall and went back. That kind of dedication, austerity he showed. And today, if you go to Mylapore, those of you who have gone to Chennai, who go to Mylapore, he's one of the best, I think Vignesh will testify to that, one of the best centers in India. So that's one. Then now, go to the right, extreme right. Tamasic Shraddha. Performer imposes severe torture or suffering on himself as well as others by his austerities. Even takes to austerities to harm or destroy others. Now you ask a question. Are we doing right during Thaipusam? Are we torturing our bodies? Piercing it? And knowing that this is the abode of Brahman? Totally not allowed actually in our Sanatana Dharma tradition. In fact, in India there was one place called near Ernakulam. They had a huge festival where they will bring in a crane. The man will be, he'll be hooked, and the crane will lift him up like that, And to witness that, hundreds of thousands of people will come. That was the main attraction of the temple. There will be money that we. When Puja Swami came to know about it, he led repeated, civil disobedience movement to put a stop to it. He said, this is not at all appropriate to our Sanatana Dharma. And he did it. He did it. But it took a long time. There are even threats to his life. Whenever you want to bring about changes like this, there will be threats to your life also. But totally unaccepted, torturing your body. Now we come to the last one, carrying out charity. See, dana is basically simply when you give, the giving that you give to blood relations or to matrimonial relations, that is not dana. True dana is that which you give to people who are not connected to you in any way. And when you give, you don't have any expectation back from the person. That is true dana. And I can only talk about a poem. It was composed by Adi Shankara in his Kaladi. He used to go and ask for alms from Nambudiri home to Nambudiri home. But on a particular home, he never used to go. And then those Nambudiris there wanted to know why. And he composed a poem. And in the poem he says, whichever house does not give dana in this manner is actually a home for cobras, a pit for cobras. Any home which does not give dana properly is actually a pit for cobras. That's how he has put it, how strongly he has put it. Means one of the important things that we should do is dana. to those who are not connected with us by matrimony or by blood. So I think you all can go back and read, but I just highlighted this, that what is this summary of behaviors. Now I'm going to ask a question. I have not more or less covered this part. I'm conscious of the time. I'm going to ask one question. And what is the question? Why does Lord Krishna take so much trouble to explain these behaviors in the 5 domains as impelled by the 4 gunas or by the 3 gunas? Why are these behaviors so chalked up? Why? The answer is very simple. Understand what are rajasic behaviors, what are tamasic behaviors. Go far away from them. If today you are taking very spicy food and all that, recognize that that agitates your body. A time must come and slowly move away from rajasic food to sattvic food. Do you know that when I was young, I'll fight with my mother. Why? I must have non-vegetarian food. But it took me decades and also exposure to great sannyasis. And once you learn that, oh, this is not correct at all for the human body. But to change the system is not easy. It takes time. Okay, our question was why? So that we can identify. In fact, what Lord Krishna or Vedavasa has done is that he has provided us a handbook, a guidebook on the behaviors that we should embrace and practice, and also the behaviors that we should eschew so that the sattvic component in us gets enhanced. All spirituality, mark my words, all spirituality, the only freedom you have is only one. What is that? To enhance the sattvic composition in you and reduce the rajasic and tamasic. You have to have all 3 in a system. But the only freedom we have is to enhance the sattvic composition. As you enhance the sattvic composition, what will happen? Your mind will be ready for knowledge. Because the greatest barrier we face is the great delusion that we are not the Atma. We feel that we are the body. So to migrate to that, we have to have sattvic constitution within us. Not only here, chapter 2, Sarvajna. Chapter 12, Bhakta Lakshanas, and chapter 13, qualities of knower, and many other places all over the Bhagavad Gita. So, only by developing a sattvic nature can we hope to transcend nature itself. If you want to transcend, Gunatida, chapter 14, transcend all the 3 gunas. If you want to transcend, you have to transcend the whole of nature, including Sattva Guna eventually. First you transcend tamasic, then transcend rajasic, but eventually you have to transcend even sattva guna also. Ramakrishna Paramahansa put it very well. Chains are chains. Earlier with rajasic and tamasic, they are iron chains. But when it comes to sattva, it is gold chain yet, but it's made of gold, that's all. But still you have to break free from the golden chain. Then only we can attain the ultimate. And what is the ultimate? That's why the beauty of this chapter 17 is in the concluding verses 23 to 27, chapter 17, Lord Krishna provides a brief description of our true identity by relating it to the 3 words Om Tat Sat. You should always be reciting this Om Tat Sat, Om Tat Sat, Hari Om Tat Sat. Why? These 3 words, let's now look at Om. What does Om signify? It's not that simple. It's one of the greatest human creations. In fact, the greatest I would say. Why? Look at the beauty of Om. That's what Puja Swami says. Is the waking state, this state, Jagrat. Sleep state, Swapna, AUM. That is the deep sleep state. So from birth to death, we are only undergoing these 3 states: wakeful, dream, and deep sleep, dreamless sleep. This cycle goes on from birth to death, and one day we die. Little realizing these three states are sustained by an unchanging substratum. My Nuthu Swami gives it beautifully. Look at the clock, he says. The dial is moving, but you are only able to perceive the movement of the dial because there's an unchanging substratum behind it. The unchanging substratum is Om, is Brahman. That's what Om signifies. Tat. Tat signifies, and is from the Samaveda, Tat Tvam Asi, that art thou. That refers to Brahman. And finally, Sat. When you prefix Sat to any word, we are actually prefixing purity, truth, and goodness. So, Tat Tvam Asi, that art thou. So, when you take collectively these three words together, Om Tat Sat, you are actually referring to Brahman itself. So, through these behaviors, move to Sattvic, transcend Sattvic, you will attain this. This is what the Bhagavad Gita does it so brilliantly, not only in chapter 17, but all the chapters. So, I think I have come to my end. Swami Sarvapriyananda has given a golden rule for presenters. Any presenter, anywhere. He said, first give an overview of what you want to say. Then say it. And the last is recapitulate. Summarize what you have said. So I'm going to summarize it and vacate this podium. One, what did I say? We say something about Bhagavad Gita in general. It's basically tackling the great delusion. Two, we went deep into the understanding of the word Shraddha, faith, and the three terms, Sattvic, Rajas, and Tamas. Three, we mapped out the human behavior under these three and the 5 domains. And once we have got this table, we should know what we should aspire for and what we should not aspire for. And finally, a brief explanation of Om Tat Sat, which are fantastic descriptors of Brahman. No other religion in the world, there is no religion which can compare with Sanatana Dharma. I'll conclude with this one beautiful statement of Swami Chinmayananda. Somebody asked him, Swami Chinmayananda, what is this so many confusion in Hinduism? No? Other religions are very simple. One book, one path, one way. Very, very simple. What is this? Your religion is so confusing. Then he retorted by asking, do you know who discovered physics? So the reply given by, who discovered? Oh, a legion of others. Right from Aristotle to Einstein. Einstein also, his theory has now been debunked by Stephen Hawking. Further debunked by what they call string theory. Things are going on and on and on. So a legion of people have contributed to physics, isn't it? Likewise to chemistry. Sanatana Dharma is there. Legions of rishis, our spiritual scientists, have contributed to this great science of discovering our true identity. All of the world's religions can actually come under Sanatana Dharma. Most people do not realize that. So with those words, thank you very much for sharing this opportunity, and maybe wish, bless that Gita Ashram will continue doing this great program year in and year out. Thank you so very much. Jai Guru.